All right, welcome back to the show. I'm here with the one and only Drew Manning. What's up, Drew?
What's up, Rachel? How are you?
I'm good. I'm so happy you're here. I can't wait to chat about all of your fun stuff that you have going on right now.
Yeah, quote unquote fun, right? It depends on how you define fun, right?
Yeah. Well, we'll dive into everything. But before we get started, do you want to kind of just give a little bit of your background and introduction to who you are, maybe just your journey to where, you've gotten today with Fit to Fat to Fit and just your personal journey?
Yeah, so most people know me as the Fit guy, which is funny because sometimes people don't even know my real name. You know, they're like Drew Manning, I never heard of that. And then Fit to Fit, they're like, oh yeah, the trainer that got fat. Anyways, so that's kind of where most people know me from. So I'll start there. So that happened in 2011, which is crazy. I just posted on Instagram a little throwback thing, and it's been almost 9 years since I did that journey,
Wow.
which is crazy. So in a nutshell, for 6 months, I decided to get fat on purpose. And the reason why behind this was because I grew up my entire life in shape. I played football and wrestling from a very young age. I grew up in a family of 11 brothers and sisters, and we all played sports. And so I never once experienced what it was like to be overweight. So here I was, a certified personal trainer through NASM, felt like I had all the tools to help people transform. And I had never been overweight in a day in my life. And then all my clients were overweight pretty much almost every day of their life, right? And I felt like there was a disconnect. I couldn't understand why it was so hard for them just to follow the meal plans and the workouts. I'm like, it's not that hard. You just put down the junk food and go to the gym. Like, why are you struggling with this? I don't get it. And so anyways, this idea of Fit to Fat to Fit kind of popped up in my head. It was really random, and it felt like it was a calling. It felt like it was something that I definitely needed to do, even though it's crazy and risky and scary and all kinds of stuff.
Mhm.
So I decided to do it. For 6 months, no exercise, ate a standard American diet. I didn't do the supersize me fast food route like Morgan Spurlock did. I kind of focused on everyday American foods that are processed, super affordable, to be honest with you, cheaper than real food, and very convenient. And I'm not gonna lie, very tasty. Like Cinnamon Toast Crunch, that's my jam. That's like crack cocaine for me. I can't not eat that. It's so
Yeah.
good. So I ate that way for 6 months and put on 75 pounds of pure fat. It was one of the hardest, most humbling things I've ever done, to be overweight for the first time. And although I didn't gain a complete understanding, I'll say I gained a better understanding versus who I was before. So, obviously I lost the weight and learned a lot of lessons along the way. The biggest takeaway for me was how much of transformation is mental and emotional. So I really developed empathy for those that struggle. And I feel like that's where people were able to relate to me, was because I had more relatability and more trust when it came to people looking at me doing Fit. They're like, okay, this guy understands me because he's been in my shoes. And so that's what I took away from it: empathy, more respect, and a better understanding, and how much of transformation is mental and emotional. Because sometimes in the world of trainers and certifications, we get so wrapped up in the physical aspect of like, okay, what's the science behind this? How does it work? Feeling like that's what's going to save people, when in reality that's not what people struggle with. In my opinion, it's not a lack of knowledge, it's them knowing how to overcome their mental and emotional challenges to make it into a lifestyle change. And that's the disconnect, and that's what I realized from doing this. So that's kind of a long-winded way of explaining who I am.
No, yeah, I love that. And I completely agree. I mean, the mindset part of things and just that whole area, like, yes, it comes down to what you're putting in your body on a daily basis. Nutrition and exercise are so important, but if you don't have the right mindset, even just going into, you know, trying to lose weight or trying to lose fat, like, yeah, maybe you'll do it, right? But you're not going to be able to maintain that. And I think that that's, like you said, a huge disconnect. It's like, you have to prepare yourself mentally and then also just be aware of like the other lifestyle factors that go outside of nutrition and fitness. So your stress management, sleep, all of these things that people are like, oh, that doesn't really matter. I can, get by with 4 hours of sleep, doesn't matter, but it actually does, right?
Yeah.
And so all of those things, especially mindset for sure, definitely comes down to that, a big piece of it. And I think for me too, I went through my own personal transformation, like, I guess it's a year and a half ago now. And that completely changed like my mindset, and just going through that myself, it like was a complete 360. And I think that, when you go through it yourself, it's so much easier to connect, like you said, with your clients and really understand what they're going through. And then also just like going through it yourself is just you just learn so much more about what's going on outside of the nutrition and the exercise. It's like there's a whole different world there. So I love that you kind of went on that journey, and it shows that you've been amazing the past few years, just spreading the word. And what kind of got you into keto specifically? Was that during your when you lost the weight after gaining it, or was it after that?
Yeah, a lot of people think I've been keto my whole life or during Fit to Fat to Fit, but back in 2011, keto wasn't really mainstream, to be totally honest with you. No one was really talking about it. Paleo was kind of on the up and up, and the way I lost the weight was more of I tell people, a paleo-ish approach, but typical kind of bodybuilder, 6 meals a day, every 3 hours,
Yeah.
that's kind of what I did for those 6 months to lose the weight. Keto didn't happen until about 4.5 or 5 years ago. I was listening to Tim Ferriss interview Dr. Dom D'Agostino, and no one knew who Dr. Dom was back then. And it just blew me away at all the scientific studies that have been done on the ketogenic diet outside of weight loss and fat loss, right? The
Mhm.
therapeutic applications. I had no idea that they were doing studies on, people with Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or traumatic brain injury or seizures and epilepsy, things like that. I had no idea. So it really intrigued me to give it a try. And so I did my own experiment. Back then, there was no influencers that were,
Mhm.
had a 60-day program or something like that. So I just kind of experimented based on what I knew at the time, did some research, got connected to Dom actually, and through him, I was able to appear on Dr. Oz talking about the benefits of the ketogenic diet. And that's where I really kind of fell in love with it, because what I realized or what I noticed wasn't more fat loss or weight loss. It was a couple things. One was the improvement in mental clarity. I've
Mhm.
never experienced that before until I did keto, and that's why I fell in love with it, because my brain felt so much sharper. I really felt like Bradley Cooper from the movie Limitless when he takes that clear pill, and I'm just like doing algorithms and learning languages.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, this is so amazing. It felt so good. And then from eating 6 meals a day to 2 meals a day, felt fantastic, able to still do CrossFit and have, optimal performance in the gym, and not be a slave to food, only having to
Mhm.
eat twice a day. My digestion was better. And so that's why I really fell in love with keto. And that's kind of where I started doing my own research and interviewing experts on my podcast, and then from there educating the masses on keto. And so that's how I stumbled upon keto.
Yeah, yeah. I think we have, exactly what you said is kind of how I got into it too, in terms of just the overall benefits that I noticed. When I got into it with my study back in 2014 with CrossFit, but I obviously adopted it for myself, and literally everything you said, like I thought of that movie Limitless. I was like, my brain is on fire. And in just the freedom, like you mentioned, like not having to think about food every few hours and just having that kind of just that freedom of not, having to eat and still feeling satiated and full and not having cravings and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that's really what um, kind of sold it for me. I'm curious, I want to talk a little bit about your experience with CrossFit and keto. Because there's a little bit of, well, not a little bit, there's a lot of I guess you could say, people who are like, you can't do CrossFit and keto. It's
Yeah.
absolutely like, no, no, no. And so I want to chat, like my actually opinion of this has changed over the years, not just opinion, but just kind of learning it and going through it myself and working with clients and finding new ways of doing things. What's kind of your experiment what
Experiments.
experience been with your journey, like with CrossFit? When did you start, and with incorporating keto, how did you kind of, how's that evolved for you over the years, I guess?
So for me, doing the research before I jumped into it, I kind of knew that there was going to be a transitionary period where I still did CrossFit, but I lowered the intensity significantly. So I wasn't like trying to be first place in the class, like beating everyone else like I used to back in the day. I really kind of let go of my ego and said, okay, I know that, there's no food in my system. How am I going to be able to do a WOD? With zero food in me, like that's really, really hard for me. I've never really done that before. So I just kind of lowered the intensity. I didn't know much about electrolytes back then. I definitely could have probably used that to help the transition be less less significant,
Mhm.
in my opinion. So I just, for the first 2 weeks, kind of lowered the intensity, still did CrossFit and felt fine, to be totally honest with you. But the way I instruct people now is if they are doing a glycolytic sport like CrossFit or jujitsu, to do a 2 week transitionary period where they load up on electrolytes first and foremost, so sodium, potassium, magnesium, or possibly some BHBs. I'm a big fan of taking that pre-workout, just to give your body an extra source of energy to pull from, and then the salt before, makes a big difference. But I tell them still to lower the intensity for the first 2 weeks, and then once they feel optimal, once they feel that breakthrough where they're like, okay, now I can push myself, then go ahead and up the intensity to allow your body adapt to those hard strains on the body, doing a CrossFit type of workout. But then from there, after about 30 days of getting keto adapted, what I tell people from there is to look into the targeted ketogenic diet approach, which is adding in carbohydrates before a hard glycolytic workout, like a Fran, for example. You're not doing 20-30 minutes of high intensity interval training, maintaining that. You're doing like 5 to 10 minutes for most of the WODs, right?
Mhm.
Um, Adding in carbohydrates once you're keto adapted seems to help with those types of athletes out a lot. So they get the benefits of keto, even though they're adding in carbohydrates that might, slightly knock them out of ketosis temporarily, but then they can pull from glucose and ketones during those hard WODs. And from what I found, and for myself and for other people, that's kind of like the trick that works for most people out there. But you just got to understand to be patient with your body, and you have to be patient with the results that you're getting, as far as, okay, I have to go through that keto adaptation phase. For some
Mhm.
people it's 30 days, for some people it might be 60. But I think that's where athletes kind of become impatient, as they, after 2 or 3 weeks, they're not there yet. They're like, I don't know if keto's worth it for me. They
Yeah.
kind of give up too early, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And that's really, I mean, the podcast is called Metflex and Chill. So we're talking all about metabolic
Yeah.
flexibility. And that's exactly what I've found over the years, just learning that, you don't necessarily have to, one, be in ketosis all the time, but two, really comes down to what you're doing and what your goals are. But I do believe in definitely going through that adaptation phase first, so you can actually train your body to know what it feels like to use ketones and fat for fuel. And I was talking to Ryan Lowery. I interviewed him last week, and we were talking a little bit about just dual fuel and metabolic flexibility and all of that, and kind of just the lack of education slash the misconceptions out there on really just CrossFit in general and our fuel sources. So a lot of people don't realize that, one, most people who are participating in CrossFit classes around the world are not your elite CrossFitters going to the CrossFit Games, right? Like 90% of the people in a CrossFit gym, if not even more, are just your average Joe, right?
Yeah.
And so that's one thing to realize. The second thing to realize is that, like, with CrossFit, yes, it's a very glycolytic sport, like you said, but there's a gray area there, because CrossFit, there, like you said, there can be workouts that are 5 minutes long. There can be workouts that are 20 or 30 minutes long. So you're
Yeah.
tapping into both your anaerobic and aerobic systems, and it's not black and white. And so being both keto adapted and being able to use fat for certain periods, and then also being able to use carbs for certain periods, is very, very powerful. And that's kind of what I've found, exactly like what you said, over the years. It's like, we don't have to be strict keto. We don't have to be strict sugar burners. If we kind of find this balance, we have really the best of both worlds. And I think that's ultimately what, working towards metabolic flexibility can give you. So I love, I think everything you said is exactly what I kind of preach as well. I want to talk a little bit about your opinion kind of on like ketosis and metabolic flexibility, and like incorporating carbs into your, not just for your workouts, but like, how do you kind of go about your lifestyle in terms of just living real life, right? And like
Yeah.
being able to go on vacation and incorporate some carbs now and then, and not feeling like you completely, went off the wagon. How do you kind of deal with that?
Yeah, so it has a lot to do with people like you and I and Ryan, teaching the masses of shifting their perception. Because the problem is, when they get into keto, it kind of becomes like this new religion where they become excited about it. They feel amazing. They want to preach it to everyone else, like, oh, you got to try this. And then they start to look at food as good or bad, or sinful food. Like, that's bread, that's bad. Like I can't have carbs. Carbs are bad. And like people freak out because they see me eat potatoes or sweet potatoes or carrots or fruit. And they're like, what are you doing? Like, what side are you on? I thought you were on our side. It's like, calm down, people. Like you got to look at carbs totally differently. Like carbs are bad or good. There's good or bad consequences sometimes, but you have to understand it's very bio-individual. Every single individual out there, there's no one size fits all approach. So for me, I can get away with 70, maybe 80 grams of carbs on certain days. And now that I'm training for a 100-mile race, which I know we'll talk about, like I'm not afraid to eat carbs, and carbs I know aren't bad for me, especially if I'm doing quality, whole food sources. That's the thing is people kind of say carbs, and the connotation with that is, oh, junk food. It doesn't have to be, just, donuts and pizza and French fries and soda, but things like potatoes and sweet potatoes and fruits are great sources of carbohydrates for our body. And it's just teaching your body, like everything is a tool, whether it's fats for fuel or carbs for fuel, depending on the quality of the sources, but experimenting, defining what that sweet spot is, like going about my daily life. I'm a dad, have two amazing daughters, and we love going on vacation or doing stuff like where we make pancakes on Sundays, or I'll have pizza with them, or they'll get me like candy for Valentine's Day. I'm trying to think of examples. I'm like, I'm not going to be that person that's like, hey, that like we don't touch that food. That stuff's bad. I don't want to set that kind of example for them. So I do educate them on health and nutrition and what's healthy. But I do let them make their own decisions sometimes when it comes to food, because I don't want to be this parent that tries to indoctrinate them into my beliefs. And if I scare them away, then at some point they're going to eventually eat that food. And I want them to be able to come to me and say, hey, I ate that food, versus feeling guilty and ashamed about it. So I've tried to be very careful about that, especially raising two daughters. And body image issues as they get older, with pressure of media and society out there. I try and be really careful about that with them. So but it's just being able to talk about it with them. So yes, I do incorporate carbohydrates, but I do it intentionally. I do it with intention, versus like mindlessly eating, or trying to distract myself by just stuffing my face when I'm bored. I try not to have junk food around the house. So I know if I have Cinnamon Toast Crunch in my cupboard, that's definitely one of those things that I'm going to eat in one day just to get it out of the way, because I can't, those kinds of foods I can't just have laying around the house. If there's fruits, if there's rice, if there's pasta, like that kind of stuff doesn't tempt me. I eat carbohydrates with intention of like, all right, I'm about to run 20 miles. Maybe I'll add in UCAN super starch, which I love that stuff. And that's a good source of carbohydrates in my body. And maybe I'll specifically add those carbs in, but it's with intention of, okay, I'm going for performance here. I'm not worried about body fat percentage, or I'm not worried about body composition necessarily. It's just, for me right now, it's just about performance.
Yeah, I totally agree. Let's talk a little bit about your training right now. I've been watching you on, over the past, I guess, when did you start training? Like a few months ago?
Yeah, about 4 or 5 months ago, I started training.
Okay. Yeah, I've been watching you over social media and stuff, and I'm just like, damn, that's intense. So tell us a little bit about your kind of, maybe not tempted you, but what initially inspired you to want to do the 100-miler?
Yeah. So it originated last year. Me and my brother read this book called Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. Actually, we listened to it on Audible. It's a great book. His story really inspired us to try something out of our comfort zone. So my brother last year was turning 45, and he's like, hey, for my birthday, I want to run 100 miles, and you're the only one in the family that can do this. So like, let's do it together. Like I was like, 100 miles. I was like, dude, I've never ran a marathon or a half marathon. How would I be able to do 100 miles? Like that seems so far out of my beliefs of what I can achieve. But I was like, after reading the book, I was like, maybe I can do it. So we took like a month to train for it, which was stupid, thinking, oh yeah, I'm already in shape. I just train for a month and shift it, and I'll get adapted and be able to pull it off. Well, long story short, we attempted it. We got 80 miles accomplished in 24 hours. We didn't finish the whole full 100, and I definitely learned a lot of lessons along the way. And so that's kind of what inspired me to do it. This year, we're doing it again because the purpose of doing it, as well as just being inspired by David Goggins, was we wanted to raise funds for an organization called Operation Underground Railroad. And it's an organization, a nonprofit, that saves child sex slaves around the world. It's one of the few things that is so black and white that good versus evil, right? We all love those kinds of stories. This is one of the things where this type of evil exists. There's over 2 million children enslaved worldwide that are sold in sex slavery in the United States, across a lot of different countries. And so this organization goes in, sets up these sting operations, and saves these child sex slaves and pulls them out. So it's very, I know the owner, he's a friend of mine, he does CrossFit. And so we're raising funds and awareness for this organization. Tony Robbins is a backer of them. He's always promoting them and raising money for them. Glenn Beck and Mike Tomlin from the Pittsburgh Steelers and a bunch of other celebrities are, raising awareness for this. So that's why we're doing it. So this year around, I'm taking about 6 months to train, which is a lot smarter. And it's been, obviously I have to adjust everything. I have to adjust my mindset. I have to adjust the way I train, the way I fuel myself. But I will say this about my approach to training for this with my nutrition is I do plan on staying strict keto-ish, but I'm, like I said, 60, 70 grams of carbs. I can still stay in ketosis and run 10, 15, 20 miles at a time. And so, but what I plan on doing is on my race day or longer runs, anything above 12 miles, I'll add in either the UCAN super starch. On race day, since I'm going to be moving for 24 hours, my philosophy is this, and this kind of works last year, but I made the mistake of not bringing enough variety of food. But I stayed strict keto, and then throughout the race, the first 2 or 3 hours didn't really eat, just had water and electrolytes and some BHBs, and then I started adding in carbohydrates. And I follow Zach Bitter. I don't know if you know Zach Bitter. He's the world record holder for 100 miles, and he's keto. But he talks about adding in carbs on race day, and that gives you kind of the whole targeted ketogenic diet approach of glucose and fats for fuel. And so I actually like that approach. And so last year I added in potatoes and salt, boiled potatoes, some protein bar, and what else did we have? We didn't have a lot of variety. That's the thing. It's like it was mostly potatoes and salt, electrolytes, BHBs, these grass or these collagen bars, which after the first like 5 or 6 hours, I was sick of everything. I was like, this tastes so gross. The texture, because you want to eat like every hour, supposedly every 45 minutes to an hour, something. And by the end, I just lost my appetite. And then that's where my body slowly declined and crashed. The last 5 hours, I couldn't run. Like my legs hurt so bad, I could just walk. So I walked the last 5 hours, and that's why I only got 80 miles in. This year around, like, honestly, I don't plan on being strict keto during the race. I don't plan on being strict, like, oh, is this gluten-free? Is this organic? Is this, all that? Like, I might just honestly just eat whatever tastes good, like texture-wise, because even though my intention would be to like, all right, this is healthier, this is keto. If I can't stand the texture of it, 12 hours in, I'm not going to eat it, and it's going to make me feel, nauseous.
Yeah.
So I might have a Pop-Tart. I might have a handful of Cinnamon Toast Crunch. I might, I'll probably start with potatoes and then transition over into some other foods. But I just feel like that's what I've learned from other ultra endurance athletes is like whatever food you can get in, even though you're strict keto, like just get something in, because what happened last year is I just got sick of the food. We didn't have a lot of options, and I just didn't eat. And when you don't eat and you're constantly moving, you eventually crash, and that's what happened. So that's what I've learned, and so we'll see.
No, I mean, I think it just all comes back to the awareness and understanding, like, you're doing this for a reason, right? Like, you have a goal in mind, and it's not like you're eating Pop-Tarts every day. Like, you have a specific reason, but you're aware of it, right? And I think that's something that, a lot of people, especially when and I did this too, like I went strict keto, I was like, all the benefits, my brain's on fire, I'm never going to eat a carb again. And then you start to get like carb phobic, and you're just like, you turn your body and your mind to become so inflexible, right?
Yeah.
For everything. And so I think that just being aware of what you're doing and really training your body to be more flexible in all of these different areas is, in my opinion, like the end goal, right? Like the gold
Yep.
standard, like you should be able to be resilient and teach your body to be as resilient as possible and as flexible as possible. Not only with the food you're eating, but like, you know, your mindset, everything, all of these things like play into it. So I love that you're kind of sharing that. Is there, speaking of carbs and carb phobia,
Yeah.
have you ever experienced, you know, when you did go strict keto and, you know, when, do you remember like incorporating carbs again? And like, if you had, you know, we have this whole fat phobia that we went through, and now I feel like a lot of people are going through this carb phobia. Did you ever experience that?
Yeah, to a smaller degree than probably most people than what I see on my Facebook groups that I run. um, I was like worried about my blood work. Like if I had, let's say, a cheat meal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh man, what's how much my blood work? Is this bad for me since I stay high fat, and then the next day just like a ton of carbohydrates? Like, what is that? Am I gonna have a heart attack? And so, but you know, I've learned over the years now, working with a lot of doctors and interviewing a lot of people about, you know, lipids and some certain tests like that. I'm not too concerned about those types of days when I do add in carbs, but for me, I do try and focus on quality carbs. Every once
Mm-hmm.
in a while, like if I'm overseas in Japan, or if I'm in Italy, or somewhere in the world where I'm going to indulge in some amazing dessert, or you know, croissant or whatever it is, like I'm going to enjoy that food for sure. But for the most part, when I'm at home, like a handful of berries here and there, you know, boiled potato with salt every once in a while, maybe some rice every now and then. Those kinds of things don't concern me anymore. But if I'm constantly doing French fries and pizza and ice cream and, you know, these things that I know that aren't high quality foods, those ones I try and avoid as much as possible. I try and make it save it for a time where it's worth it. When I do travel
Mm-hmm.
abroad, for example. Um, but I definitely don't have that anymore. But there were times back in the day where, yeah, I was worried about it. But yeah, not so much anymore. I think it just takes people experience and time to get over that. And hearing from people like you and me preaching about it, like, hey, you guys don't need to make this into religion. There's no good or bad food. There's good or bad consequences, and it's
Mm-hmm.
important for you to be aware of what those foods are that cause bad consequences, and know intentionally, like, all right, I'm going to eat this ice cream. I'm lactose intolerant. I know exactly what's going to happen. And if you still do it, then, you know, that's up to you. Like,
Yeah.
that's kind of your battle to choose. But that's kind of what I've learned over the years. And I think just help people having experiences, I think that's better for them. Like, hey, have
Yeah.
that bad experience. Go ahead and feel awful by eating a bunch of junk food, and hopefully that'll teach you something. But it's all about those experiences and having
Mm-hmm.
them, and then from there moving forward.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that as you experience and go through these kind of like it takes time, it doesn't happen overnight. And you build new habits, you build healthier habits, and you're able to kind of get away from having, you know, those stuff in the house as well. And like just changing your environment and making it more, you know, realistic for you as well. And
Yeah.
like what your goals are. And like there's some people who are very, you know, insulin resistant and um, can't tolerate having some carbs, you know, now and then. And there's also some people who are maybe not as insulin resistant, but they've had such a bad relationship with carbs in the past that they feel better just keeping them out.
Yeah.
But I also think that changes over time. Like we adapt, we learn, we grow. Like for us, it's been, I mean, we've been in this space for many years. And for me, it's like I'm trying new things every day. You know,
Yeah.
nothing's stagnant. We're always learning, we're always growing and adapting. I think that's also another thing. Like if you can be aware of these things, it's just like that is what I think will make you awareness and education and just understanding different concepts. That's really like what my goal is, to help people just become more aware.
Mhm.
And so I know you're doing that as well. One thing I did want to ask you too is in terms of like clients that you work with or people you've worked with, the whole kind of something that I really found for myself when I went through my own transformation is I'd come to this like sticking point, and I was like, all right, I'm helping all these other people do these things and see results. And like for myself, I'm not seeing the results, like I'm stuck. And so I decided to like put my ego aside and I hire my own coach. And one of the biggest things I found from that was just like the accountability standpoint and just having to be accountable to someone every single day and that awareness factor. Have you like ever gone through that yourself or kind of had feedback from some of your clients in terms of like the accountability side of things?
Yeah, that's a good question. For specific situations like this 100-mile race, I definitely brought on some people like a coach to help me stay accountable, one, but also to shift my perception of the type of training I needed to do, and then switching up my nutrition slightly. But just in general, overall, I think each person's very different. Certain people are motivated by having a coach, and an accountability coach that keeps you accountable with your training or your eating. For me, I try not to get too specific or too wrapped up in those kinds of things, unless I'm training for something specific or big, like this 100-mile race coming up.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that's really important for everyone to do, to have a coach to keep you accountable. And at the end of the day, that's really what it's about, right? It like, for you at your level where you're at, like, you have the knowledge for sure, but almost everyone that I know out there at the top of their game has a coach or a mentor to keep them
Hmm.
accountable. They might have all the knowledge in the world, but they still need someone to push them every once in a while, because we're all human, and we all sometimes seek out the easier path. And so I think that's really valuable and really important for everyone listening out there to stay accountable to someone, whether it's a friend, family member, hiring a coach, a personal trainer, being part of a Facebook group, something that's going to give you a support that gives you a balance of empathy and love, and letting you know that you're worth it to keep fighting for whatever your goals are, but then also kicking the butt every once in a while, which we all need. And so I think it's really important you do that. And like I said, I'm doing that right now, having a coach help me with training for my 100-mile run, and it's going really well. Like I said, last year I just tried to wing it with a month of training, and it worked out, better than I thought. 80 miles is, I'm still pretty proud of myself. But anyways, this year I'm determined to do it.
You will. You will.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I love that. And I think also, like, some people think about, having a stake in the game, having, whether it's a financial stake in the game. For me personally, like, I pay my coach on a monthly basis, and it's like having that kind of financial behind it, that like stake in the
Yeah.
game, and knowing that I'm putting my hard-earned money towards that. I think it gives you another, like, it's just another thing that holds you accountable in itself. So I found, like, even for myself, like, I would have coaches that would coach me for free, and that versus what I'm doing, or what I've been doing for the
Yeah.
past year, over a year, it's like completely different. It just changes your mindset.
Yeah.
Um, and on the topic of mindset, I know that you have, like you mentioned, you have a lot of experience with this. Are there any, like, mindset practices or anything that you do on a daily basis, maybe through like a morning routine or something like that, that you've found to be beneficial for yourself?
Oh, 100%. Over the past, I would say 4 or 5 years since my divorce, I've really switched things up, because going through something like that, where you hit rock bottom, and not everyone's been through a divorce, but I think we all can relate to being at rock bottom. Having moments like that in life forces you to look outside your circle of knowledge of, like, okay, this is what I know, these are the tools I have, and realize that you need more, you need help from outside that circle. And
Mhm.
so for me, like, humbling myself enough to hiring a life coach, a therapist, to help shift my perception of my situation and myself after that, starting to incorporate things like meditation, which of course I thought was really weird. And you know who does that? Like, that's just monks, and I don't know, like, it just seems so foreign to me. But I was like, you know what, I'm going to give it a try, just because I was so willing to. I just wanted to get out of where I was. I was willing to try new things to help me. And so meditation, positive affirmations, a gratitude list, even though they're super small things, journaling, those kind of things slowly over time shifted my perception of myself, my situation. So instead of defining myself by my past, or getting stuck in the same neural pathways, the same patterns we've been taught since we were kids, those kinds of things disrupted that and helped me take a step back and observe my thoughts rather than become my thoughts. I could sit back and observe everything that was going on, and not attach myself emotionally to every thought that came up. And so I was less reactive and more thoughtfully responding to situations in my life. And that's kind of where I've made so much progress in the personal development world. And that's in turn, in the end, helped me become a much more powerful coach, a much more powerful, influencer, if you will, to help people see the parallel between their mental emotional struggles that stem from sometimes childhood trauma or challenges from when they were kids. And it kind of ties into the struggles they have with physical transformation, like
Mm-hmm.
eating, food addiction, not having motivation, not having self-worth and low self-esteem, like building that awareness of, okay, where is this stuff coming from? Let's dial it back and figure that out. And so doing those morning routines of, meditation and positive affirmations and gratitude journaling, those kinds of things can really help that person connect the dots and see the correlation between, okay, this is why I struggle with being strict with my meal plans, because every time a trigger comes up, whether it's my kids or finances or my husband or my spouse, triggers something in me, it causes me to derail and self-sabotage. And
Mm-hmm.
as at least being aware of it, that's kind of like one of the biggest steps you can do to build that self-awareness of like, I see it now, this is where it's coming from, now I can stop it from happening because I'm thoughtfully responding instead of reacting. So for me, morning routine of those things that I mentioned has really helped me, and I try and pass that on to my clients. But also, my new book, Complete Keto, I
Mm-hmm.
incorporate those into the meal plans, the workouts, the physical stuff you're supposed to do. But on top of that is the working in part instead of just the working out part.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. And again, it comes back to that the whole lifestyle. Everything is involved, just not just the nutrition and exercise, but the mindset, the stress management, all of these things. And I was kind of in the same, I feel like we were the same person. Because when I first started meditation, I was like, I can't, like I was the furthest person from like ever even thinking about meditating. And my coach actually made me start it. He held me accountable to do it, and I did it. And it just became a habit that I built, just starting with 5 minutes in the morning, following like a
Yeah.
guided meditation. And exactly what you said, like it's something that kind of switches on in your brain, and you just kind of become so much, you stop reacting to things so quick, and you just become so much more mindful with
Mm,
all different areas. And so like, that's what I found just with meditation and gratitude and having that morning routine and being able to implement that, on a daily basis and making it a habit, right? Making it part of your everyday life. It just like changed the game for me and for all of my clients that I've worked with. And I know obviously for you and your clients. So yeah, I think that's super important. And if you're someone listening, you're like, I'm never going to meditate in my life. Like that's like all woo woo monk stuff. Like you said,
yeah.
honestly, like start with 2 minutes even, and just get an app. I use the Waking Up app by Sam Harris,
Mm,
or like
yeah.
Calm or Headspace or anything like that. And just like make it and have someone hold you accountable for it, right?
Yep.
If you're doing little things like this every single day and you're held accountable for it, eventually it becomes a habit that you built, and you don't even have to be held accountable because you realize how much of a difference it makes. So yeah,
Yep.
but no, I could ramble
Man.
on about this for forever, but um,
Yeah.
yeah. So is there, on that topic kind of what you've done in the last year, is there anything, I want to end with a few questions for you. So is
Sure.
there anything that you have changed your mind about specifically in the last year, and why?
That's a good question. That's a really hard one.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about that when you sent me the questions. I was
Yeah.
like, because I feel like honestly, if I look back 10 years ago, I never would have thought I would be the person on who I am today. And I've changed my mind about so many things, from perception of divorce, perception of the religion I grew up in, now being outside of that, looking at things from the outside looking in. I'm like, wow, I can't believe I used to think this way. And now I'm out of it. I'm like, I feel so free and I feel authentically me. From a keto/nutrition perspective, I'm assuming that's what you're kind of getting at there with that question.
Whatever.
But
Yeah. Whatever.
yeah, for me, it was my approach to doing keto. Like I said, there wasn't a lot of information back then. So for me, it was all just about high fat, and didn't really focus on the quality of food. And then from there, transition into more of a whole food approach. And then recently, I've found that people, if they exclude dairy and nuts for the first 30 days or so of going keto, they tend to get better results, because those are two foods that are super easy to overconsume. Not saying they're
Mhm.
bad for you, but they can be very easy to overconsume. One cheese stick, 2, 3 cheese sticks during the day, and then 5 handfuls of cashews. Before you know it, you're out of ketosis and you can't stop eating those foods. I've just found people get better results with that. And then let's see, what else have I changed my mind on? I've always been pretty empathetic towards people, different things working for different people. Like, let's say someone's vegan, let's say someone is more of a paleo, or someone outside of the keto world. I know some people think, well, keto is the best, and because this has worked for me and so many people. I really don't buy into that, to be totally honest with you. I kind of see it as different things work for different people for different periods of their life, and maybe it's okay to transition and switch and upgrade and evolve and experiment. Like even Ryan did a 30-day vegan experiment just to see what it's like, and I think that's really important to do. So I guess one of the things I have changed my mind on is like allowing people the freedom to find out what works best for them, and that might not be what I currently preach, whether that's keto or intermittent fasting, and that's okay. It's not the end of the world. So, but I was never like a Nazi about it in the past. So, but just being more open about that, giving people permission to be that way.
Yeah, 100%. I think, and that's definitely something that I've learned over the years as well. Like if you can't be so dogmatic about your views, because honestly, like we don't really know, right? Like this is all an experiment for all of us. And so, yeah, you can say there's research out there on this, that, and whatever, but it's still all an experiment. And I love what you said, like there's no one way to do something. Like one way might work for someone, but even for yourself, like something that worked for you or me 2 years ago, maybe it doesn't work anymore, right?
Yeah.
And so you always have to just be aware and be, evolving and adapting. So I love all of that. So last kind of hot seat question. If you had one daily theme song, what would it be?
One daily theme song? That's a hard one.
Yeah. Like what would your
if I had to listen
song
to
be?
one song for the rest of my life, like if I had to wake up and listen to that one song the rest of my life kind of thing?
Yeah. Or like a song that you feel like kind of is your song, your daily theme song.
That's a good one. It would either be Three Little Birds by Bob Marley. That's one of like the all-time like positive vibe songs that you can't be mad if you're listening to that song.
Yeah.
The other one would be Somewhere Over the Rainbow by Bretta is from I can't remember his last name, the big Hawaiian guy.
Yeah.
His version of that song is another one that would be I wouldn't mind listening to for like if I had one song. It just kind of putting me in the right headspace of, there's obviously some hardcore heavy metal or like hardcore rap songs that I could think of, but that's not me every day, right? This kind of, I'd say Three Little Birds, something like that, a positive vibe is what I want to put out there. There's gonna be some days where I put on some Tupac or some gangster rap and just like handle stuff, but that's not every day.
So moral of the story is you're just a big teddy bear.
Yeah. I'm not this hardcore, guy. I think having daughters really has softened me in a little bit, but I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with that. Like I have their names tattooed and their fists, like our hands tattooed together. Strong father, strong daughters. Like that's like, I don't mind playing Barbies or doing dancing TikTok videos with them. So
I love that. I've been following you on TikTok. Your stuff is is awesome. I need to like get on that. I've been so, oh my gosh, I'm like, I don't know.
It's just another thing to waste your time and take away from everything else. But my girls love it, so I want to be involved with what they do, and so it's kind of it can be a good thing, like a family bonding time. Like, hey, let's do some TikTok video, and they love it. So
I love that.
Anyways,
I love that.
Well, thanks for following.
So do you have anything that's like coming up that you're excited about? I know you have your book out. Anything on the horizon besides the 100-miler that you're looking forward to?
Yes, but I can't talk about it yet publicly because I need to get some things in place first before I launch it. But it'll probably be the second half of the year, towards like September. Be ready for some big announcements. But the 100-mile race, that's kind of like the next thing on my radar that I just want to tackle and get over with, so I don't have to run again ever.
Awesome.
But stay tuned.
When is the race again? April
9th and 10th.
Okay.
Yeah, and if people want to donate, you can go to my there's a link. I can send it to you, but if you go to my Instagram and look at my posts, there's a link there, or on Facebook as well, Fit to Fat to Fit. If people want to donate, we're trying to raise $100,000, so that would be $1 per mile. That's $100 donation. If I could get 1,000 people to donate, that's $100,000. So
For sure, for sure. And can they donate after the race as well? Like, is it
yep.
continued? Okay. So I'll
Yeah,
definitely
we'll
put
have the
that.
link up. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll put that in the show notes for sure. Is there anything else that you want our listeners to know about, that you want to share? Your book is called.
So I have two books. One is
Yep.
Fit to Fat to Fit. That's the first one. That goes through my journey of gaining and losing weight and what I learned.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is called Complete Keto, and both of those are available at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. You can check them out online. There's an Audible version of both of them as well. All my branding is at Fit to Fat to Fit, kind of like you see here,
Yeah.
Fit #2, Fat #2, Fit. And that's pretty much it, you guys. I appreciate
Sweet.
all the love and support. And yeah, we got some big things coming up soon, so stay tuned.
Awesome. Awesome. I will definitely link everything in the show notes. I appreciate you being here. I love, everything that you were talking about. I think we have a lot of the same views. And I think that just, getting people a little bit more educated and aware, and just realizing that there's, no one way that fits one person, and you got to adapt and learn and grow on your own journey. So I love watching yours, and I can't wait to see what else you got going, coming out.
Okay. Thanks, Rachel. Appreciate you having me on.
Sweet. All right. I'll talk to you soon.